Manny never really talked about his father, not in interviews, not in documentaries, not even when people begged to know what truly fueled his fire. But behind every punch, every win, every round he survived, there was silence. The silence of a little boy whose father walked away when the family needed him most. A silence deeper than poverty, deeper than hunger. You see, Manny grew up in the kind of struggle most people only see in movies. Sleeping on cardboard, selling donuts on the street, wearing holes in shoes that were never really his. And through all of it, he watched his mother sacrifice, watched his siblings go without meals, watched life keep testing them, while one man, the man who should have protected them, was nowhere to be found. Manny never said he hated his father, but he never said he forgave him either. People saw the boxer, the champion, the congressman, the millionaire, but they never saw the child. The child still waiting at the door, hoping his father would come home and say, "I'm proud of you, Anak." Years passed. Glory came, and the world knew his name. But inside, that unanswered pain stayed frozen. Until one day, a call came through from someone he hadn't heard from in years. "Manny, your father's not doing well. He's asking for you." And just like that, the fighter inside him, the undefeated warrior, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear, because some wounds don't bleed. They just echo. If this story already touches your heart, leave a in the comments. Before the belts, before the fame, before the stadiums chanted his name, there was hunger. Not the kind you feel when you skip lunch. No, this was the kind of hunger that made your vision blur. The kind that made your hands shake during school. The kind that forced a 12-year-old boy to sell bread in the streets, just so his mother could eat. Manny Pacquiao didn't train in a $1 million gym. He trained in alleys. He punched, old tires tied to trees. He shadowboxed until his arms went numb, not for sport, but for survival, and all the while, that quiet rage grew inside him. Where was his father? Why did he leave? Why did he abandon a son who only wanted to be seen? You see, Manny wasn't chasing trophies. He was chasing something deeper, dignity. He remembered the nights his mother cried herself to sleep. He remembered sharing a single piece of bread between 4 siblings. He remembered the shame of being too poor to pay school fees, of being told he'd never be anything, but every no became fuel. Every rejection became a reason, and in the silence of those nights, he made himself a promise. One day, the world will know my name, not because I'm angry, but because I refuse to stay broken. And still, no call, no letter. No sign of the man who had started it all. The man whose absence built a fire in Manny's heart. A fire that would one day take him to the top of the boxing world. But even champions carry scars. Even when they win, there's a piece of them, still fighting the ghosts of childhood. Manny didn't want revenge. He wanted closure. He just didn't know. That closure was finally coming, and it would break him, in front of the entire world. Manny Pacquiao had been in wars, literal wars. 12 rounds of blood, sweat, and fists, against the greatest boxers in the world. But this fight, this one didn't happen in a stadium. There were no bright lights, no roaring crowds, no referee to break things up. This was a fight within. It began with a phone call. One quiet evening, just months after announcing his retirement, Manny was in General Santos City, sipping coffee beside his wife Jinky. The air was warm, peaceful, and then his phone rang. An unfamiliar voice, tired, frail. "Manny, it's your father." Time stopped. For a moment, Manny couldn't breathe. He felt like that 12-year-old boy again, the one watching his father leave. No goodbye, no explanation. And now, decades later, that voice had returned. But not to make amends, not to catch up, not even to apologize. He was calling to say goodbye. Manny's father was dying, his body was giving out, and he had just days, maybe hours left. I didn't know how to be a father," he whispered. "I was scared. I was ashamed. And I've watched you, from far away, become a man I don't even deserve to speak to. Manny stood there frozen, his phone trembling in his hand. His mind raced. He wanted to scream. He wanted to ask why. Why he was left to starve. Why he watched his mother cry night after night. Why he had to learn to survive while his father disappeared. But instead, he said nothing. Because in that moment, he realized something. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about choosing what kind of man he wanted to be. Not just a son. And so, the world champion, the legend, the man who had once fought Floyd Mayweather and Oscar De La Hoya, didn't speak with rage. He booked a ticket, quietly, no cameras, no press, no entourage, just a son on his way to see the man who broke his heart. When Manny arrived at the hospital, it was dark. He walked into the room slowly, and there he was, a frail man, lying on a hospital bed, skin pale, voice weak, eyes full of regret. "You didn't have to come," his father said. But Manny, holding back tears, shook his head. "I had to. Not for you. For me." For hours they sat in silence. No punches thrown, just quiet words, stories, and a truth that had waited 30 years to be spoken. "I'm sorry." 2 words, simple, late. But they landed harder than any left hook Manny had ever taken. And in that moment, the fighter broke. His head dropped. Tears poured down. He wasn't Manny the icon anymore. He was just a son, grieving the father he never had. The moment was captured, not by paparazzi, but by a single nurse who stood outside the door, eyes wet with tears. That moment went viral. If you've ever longed for an apology that came too late, drop A in the comments. What would you do if the person who hurt you asked for forgiveness? Subscribe now, because this story is about more than boxing. It's about healing. The hospital room was quiet now. Machines hummed gently, tracking a heartbeat that was growing weaker with every passing hour. Manny sat beside the bed, staring at a man who felt both like a stranger and his father. They had only spoken for a few hours, but somehow a lifetime's worth of silence had started to lift. Not fully, but enough. "You know, when you were born, I was afraid," his father whispered, eyes barely open. "I thought I'd ruin your life. I thought I was too broken to raise a good man." Manny didn't respond at first. His hands clenched into fists, the same fists that had made him a world champion. But not today. Today he wasn't fighting an opponent. He was wrestling with the past. "You leaving didn't make me weaker," he finally said, voice steady. "It made me fight harder." He paused, then added, "But it also made me question if I was ever enough." Those words hung in the air like a heavy fog. His father began to cry softly. "I watched your fights, every single one," he said. "You were the best of us, and I wasn't there to see it in person." Manny blinked back tears. How strange, he thought, that the man who abandoned him also carried the deepest pride for who he became. The next morning, doctors said he didn't have long. Jinky arrived quietly, placing her hand on Manny's shoulder. She had seen him victorious in arenas filled with tens of thousands, but she had never seen him like this. "Do you want to say goodbye?" she asked gently. He nodded. Manny walked back into the room. This time, he wasn't afraid. He looked at the man in the bed, weak, regretful, and knelt beside him. "You hurt me," he said quietly. "But I forgive you." There was no dramatic music, no applause, just silence and peace. His father, tears running down his cheeks, whispered his final words. "You're a better man than I ever was. Thank you for giving me a second chance, even if it was just for one day." And just like that, he was gone. The monitor beeped flat. Manny stood there, not as a boxer, not as a politician, not even as a global icon. He stood there as a son, letting go of 30 years of pain in a single exhale. Outside the hospital, the sky had begun to brighten, the dawn of a new day. Manny walked out into the morning light, a strange feeling settling in his chest. He hadn't just said goodbye to his father. He had said goodbye to the wound. He had broken the cycle. He had chosen forgiveness, not because his father had earned it, but because he needed it. Not all endings are clean, but this one was honest. And sometimes that's enough. It had been a week since the funeral. The world moved on, as it always does. Fans were still talking about Manny's recent charity appearance. Reporters asked polite questions. Friends gave him space. But grief is quiet. It doesn't always show up in tears. Sometimes it just lingers. Manny sat alone in his study, the cell, curtains drawn. On the table before him lay a simple brown envelope. No logo, no postage stamp, just his name written in shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. Emmanuel. It had arrived the day after the funeral, delivered by a quiet nurse who had worked the night shift. He asked me to give you this in case he didn't get the chance to say everything. Manny had taken it, but couldn't bring himself to open it. Not right away. Because what if the words inside reopened the wounds he had just begun to heal? But today, he was ready. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single piece of lined paper, folded twice. The edges were creased and soft, like it had been handled many times before. He unfolded it and began to read. My son, I don't deserve to call you that. Not after everything. But I hope you'll let me say it one last time. I know you must have questions. Why I left, why I stayed gone, why I never came back even after you became a household name. The truth is, shame is a cruel prison. Every time I saw your face on a billboard or in the ring, I felt two things: pride and fear. Pride in the man you'd become. Fear that if I showed up, I'd ruin it. I didn't think I was worthy of your forgiveness. So I stayed in the shadows, convincing myself it was for your good. But I watched, Manny. Every fight, every interview, every time you raised your fist in victory, I raised mine too. Not because I thought I deserved to share in your success, but because I wanted you to feel loved even from afar. Manny paused. His hands trembled. He looked away for a moment, the letter blurring through his tears. He continued reading. You became everything I never was. Strong, disciplined, kind. You made a name not just for yourself, but for the Philippines. For the poor, for the forgotten. And you did it with heart. I didn't teach you that. You taught yourself. You taught me too. There were nights I would hold your old baby shoes and wonder, if I had stayed, would I have made you stronger or broken you more? I guess I'll never know. But if there is one thing I wish for more than anything, it's that you won't carry the weight of my failures on your back. I see the way you lead, in the ring, in politics, in your family. And I realize you've already forgiven me in ways I never had the courage to ask. Thank you for letting me see you one last time. Thank you for showing me who you are, and for giving me the chance, however brief, to be your father again. With love, always, Ernesto. Silence filled the room. Manny folded the letter slowly and held it against his chest. For a long time, he didn't move. There were no more words, no more explanations, just peace. He looked out the window, where his children were playing in the yard. Laughter echoed through the walls. Life was happening. Even as grief lingered, Jinky entered the room quietly. You read it? He nodded. And? Manny took a deep breath. He was broken, but he loved me the only way he knew how. Jinky placed her hand over his. And now? He looked at her, eyes soft. Now I break the chain. The days passed slowly after Manny read his father's letter. There was no dramatic breakdown in front of cameras, no social media post, no press release, just silence, the kind that changes a man. But transformation doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it reveals itself in how we treat strangers. One rainy Tuesday morning, Manny was scheduled to appear at a youth detention center in Manila. It wasn't glamorous. There were no news crews. Just a group of forgotten boys, most under 18, all facing charges. Some stole food, some ran with gangs. A few hadn't seen their parents in years. When Manny entered the facility, the guards stood, tall. The boys didn't cheer. They just stared. They weren't used to kindness, certainly not from world-famous boxers. Manny walked in quietly, no entourage, just him and his heart. He looked around at the faces, hard, skeptical, guarded. But behind each pair of eyes he saw something familiar. "I know what it feels like," he said after a long pause. "To be hungry, to be angry, to be forgotten." The room stayed still. "I know what it's like to grow up wondering if your father will come back, and wondering what's wrong with you that he left." One boy in the back shifted, another looked down. "But I also know what it's like to forgive." Manny told them about his childhood, sleeping in cardboard boxes, selling donuts on the street, the hunger, the violence, the silence of abandonment. "And I know you don't need a perfect past to have a powerful future." Then something happened. One of the boys stood up. His name was Arnell, 16 years old, arrested for robbery, tattoos on his arms, hat low over his eyes. "Why should we believe you?" he asked, voice low. "You're rich now. You don't know our life anymore." A guard moved toward the boy, but Manny raised his hand. He walked toward Arnell, slowly, gently. He stopped just inches from him. Then Manny took off the Rolex on his wrist and placed it in the boy's hand. Everyone froze. "That watch is worth more than you've ever stolen. If you were really who they say you are, you'd run, right?" Arnell stared at the watch. Silence. Tension. Then he handed it back. Manny smiled. "See? You just made your first good choice." The boys looked around at each other. For the first time, someone believed they were capable of better. Manny stayed for 2 more hours. He prayed with them. He laughed with them. He listened to stories no one else had bothered to hear. And as he left, the guards, tough men who had seen it all, stood a little taller. "He didn't come here as a hero," one said. "He came here as a father." No flashy headlines, no trending hashtags. But something much deeper happened. One of the guards secretly filmed a moment where Manny hugged a boy who had just started crying after hearing the story of Manny's father. He had whispered, "Mine left too." The video was posted with the caption, "Even champions need healing. And even the broken can become champions." In 48 hours, it had 12 million views. Back home, Manny sat with his youngest son. "Papa?" the boy asked. "Why do you still cry when you talk about Lolo Ernesto?" Manny paused, then answered, with a soft smile. "Because he gave me something, even when he had nothing. He gave me the chance to forgive." The boy tilted his head. "Is forgiving hard?" "It's the hardest fight I ever had, but the most important one." Years had passed. Manny Pacquiao was no longer the lean, sharp fighter he once was in the ring. His fists, once feared across continents, were softer now, more used to holding his grandchildren than delivering knockouts. But his heart, stronger than ever. The public still remembered the moment. That moment when the world saw the champion crumble. Not from a punch, but from a letter. His father's last words had peeled back the armor, revealing the wounded boy behind the legend. And while fans moved on, headlines faded, and the noise quieted, Manny never forgot. One rainy morning, he sat at his study table, alone. The window beside him showed a view of Mindoro's hills, green, peaceful, silent, just like his childhood. And in front of him was a blank sheet of paper. He picked up his pen, not a camera in sight, no press, no fans, just a father, writing to his son. "You are a man now. You have your own battles to fight, your own dreams to chase. But there are things I never told you, things I carried for years. And if I leave this world before I say them, I would regret it forever. You know me as a boxer, as a senator, as a man of God. But before all of that, I was a boy without a father. Your grandfather, Ernesto, was not always kind. He left us when I needed him most. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't explain. And for years I hated him. I boxed not just for glory, but to punish the pain he left behind. Every punch was a scream. Every fight was a way to say, look at me now. Are you proud yet? But that hate, it didn't heal me. Only forgiveness did. He came back into my life too late. But his last letter gave me peace. He asked for forgiveness, not as a proud man, but as a broken one. And in that moment, I became free. So here's what I want you to know. Don't wait to forgive. Don't wait to say sorry. Don't let pride become your prison. We Pacquiaos, we are fighters. But the most powerful punch we ever throw is mercy. Never be ashamed to cry, to pray, to kneel. Real strength is not in your arms. It's in your ability to love. If I ever fail you as a father, I beg you to forgive me. Don't carry my mistakes like I carried my father's. Build your home on compassion. Lead your children with softness, not fear. And remember, the world will remember your victories, but your family will remember your kindness. I love you, beyond titles, trophies, or time. Your father, Manny. He signed it, folded it carefully, and placed it in a wooden box beside his Bible. That letter was never meant for the cameras. But one day, after Manny's death, it would be discovered. And it would do what all his fights couldn't. It healed generations. Later that evening, Michael visited his father. He saw the tiredness in Manny's eyes, not from age, but from carrying stories too heavy for words. "Papa," he asked, "why did you never tell me all this before?" Manny smiled. "Because I wanted you to hear it when you were ready to understand." "Understand what?" "That forgiveness is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength." Michael, now a father himself, nodded slowly. He looked at his son playing on the porch. "I get it now," he said. "You didn't raise a boxer, you raised a healer." Years later, when Michael shared his father's letter publicly at a youth summit, something unexpected happened. No music, no drama, just his voice. By the time he finished reading, the room was silent, except for quiet sobs. The video was posted to YouTube. The title was simple: "The letter Manny Pacquiao wrote, but never read aloud." Within 48 hours, it had crossed 18 million views. Across the world, people left comments. "This broke me and rebuilt me. I called my father for the first time in 12 years because of this. I forgave someone who never apologized." He was more than a fighter. He was a bridge. Michael was invited to speak at schools, prisons, youth camps. But he always started with one line: "I'm not here because my father was perfect. I'm here because he taught me that healing is possible." And that, more than belts, medals, or money, became Manny Pacquiao's true legacy. He was born in poverty, raised in pain, made famous by fists, but remembered forever for his heart. If this story moved something in your soul, share it with someone you need to forgive, or someone you still love, despite everything. Comment below. Real champions forgive if you believe healing is the greatest victory. Like this video if you cried even once. Subscribe to Social Justice with inspiration for more stories that go beyond the headlines and straight to the heart. Thank you for watching. Let this not just be content. Let this be your moment to break a cycle. Until next time, stay inspired, stay soft, stay strong.